They say some moments haunt you forever, but no one ever talks about the ones that whisper first. The ones that creep into your life so quietly, you don't even realize they're changing you until you're already someone you don't recognize. You see, not every mistake starts with temptation. Some start with loneliness. Some start with silence. Some start with a smile you've seen 100 times, until suddenly, that smile feels different. It's been 2 years. Too long, aching years since that night. Since the moment my husband's best friend, someone I thought I knew, looked at me across our kitchen table and asked me something that shattered everything I thought I understood about loyalty, love, and myself. And I said yes, not out loud, not at first. But deep inside, something whispered yes, long before I ever opened my mouth. I wish I could tell you it was easy to say no. I wish I could say I didn't feel anything. But that would be a lie. And I've already lived with enough of those. I remember that night like it's stitched into my skin. The way the clock ticked just a little too loudly. The way his eyes didn't flinch when he asked. The way my breath caught not because I was shocked, but because part of me wasn't. And that terrifies me more than anything else. He said it so casually, like he was asking to borrow sugar. Like it was a normal thing for a man to ask his best friend's wife. But nothing after that moment was ever normal again. The house felt colder. The silence between me and my husband felt louder. And I started to notice things about myself I had buried for years. The longing, the ache, the need to feel like I still mattered to someone. I'm not telling you this because I'm proud of what happened. I'm telling you because sometimes the biggest betrayals don't come from hate. They come from a place so empty, it starts pulling in anything that feels warm. And he was warm. Too warm. So, if you're here looking for a perfect love story, this isn't it. This is messy. This is real. This is what happens when hearts go hungry too long and boundaries blur in the shadows. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where the hidden corners of the heart are revealed, one story at a time. Because you're not alone in your questions, your mistakes, or your search for something that feels like home again. Now come with me. Because the part I'm about to tell you next, that's where everything truly began. My name is Clarissa. I've been married to Mark for 12 years. We have 2 kids. A dog. A house with a white fence and a porch swing that we never use anymore. And an unspoken silence between us that gets heavier with every passing year. Mark is a good man. He's never raised his voice. He pays the bills, mows the lawn, takes the kids to soccer when I'm too tired. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me, stopped hearing me. It's not that he's mean. He's just busy, distracted. Always looking down at his phone, always too tired, too focused on the next project, the next meeting, the next goal. And me? I learned to stop asking. Stop expecting. Stop hoping. That's the part no one tells you about marriage. Sometimes it doesn't fall apart with shouting. Sometimes it falls apart in silence. Then there's Damien, Mark's best friend since college. The one who was always around, always laughing, always full of stories, always a little too smooth for his own good. I used to think of him as harmless. Like a brother. Someone who fit into our life like an extra piece, helpful, familiar, safe. But lately, I've started to notice things. The way his eyes lingered when I walked into the room. The way he remembered small things I'd said in passing. The way he'd make me laugh, really laugh on days when Mark barely noticed I was even home. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Reading too much into things. Wanting to feel something, anything. That reminded me I was still here. But it wasn't just me. He started coming over more often. Bringing coffee. Fixing things that weren't broken. Offering help before I even asked. And the worst part? I let him. Because when someone gives you the attention you've been starving for, you don't ask why the meal is being served. You just eat. Our house, on the outside, looked like any other suburban home. Morning school runs, weekend groceries, birthday parties, family dinners. But inside, there were 3 people sitting at our table. One husband, one wife, and one man who was slowly stepping into a space my husband had left empty. And I knew it. I felt it. The shift. The way the air changed when Damien walked into a room. The way my heart picked up just a little when he smiled. The way I hated how much I liked it. Was he always like that? Or was I just starting to see? And if I was just starting to see, what did that say about me? Because deep down, in the quiet hours after the kids went to bed and Mark drifted off with his back turned to me, I wasn't just wondering about Damien's intentions. I was starting to question my own. It was a Sunday. The kind of quiet Sunday that feels like the whole world is taking a breath. The kids were at my sister's for the weekend. Mark had gone out for groceries, said he'd be quick, but I knew better. He always lingered. Grocery shopping was his little escape. Damien had dropped by earlier that morning to return a power drill Mark lent him. Somehow, that turned into coffee, which turned into him crawling under the kitchen sink to help fix a leaky pipe I'd been nagging Mark about for weeks. I remember kneeling on the floor beside him, holding the flashlight while he twisted valves and tightened bolts. It was harmless, familiar, until it wasn't. We were laughing about something, I don't even remember what anymore, and I handed him a towel. His hand brushed mine, just for a second. But it stayed, like the warmth of it imprinted on my skin. And then, out of nowhere, he stopped what he was doing, looked up at me, really looked, and said, "Clarissa, can I ask you something weird?" I remember freezing, not scared, not even nervous. Just alert, like something inside me already knew the shape of what was coming. I smiled, tried to brush it off. "Sure," I said, half laughing. "You're always weird." But he didn't laugh. He wiped his hands on the towel slowly, then sat back on his heels and looked me dead in the eyes. "I want to take you out. Just once. Not as Mark's wife, but as the woman I've watched slowly disappear behind that smile." The room got quiet. Too quiet. Even the dripping had stopped. For a moment, I thought I misheard him. Or maybe he was joking. I let out a small laugh, awkward, uncertain. "You're serious?" I asked. He didn't blink. "I see you, Clarissa. I see how tired you are. How lonely. And I know I probably have no right to say it. But I think you deserve one night where you feel like you again." My heart was pounding. Not because I was flattered. Not because I was offended. But because he was right. I had disappeared. Bit by bit. In all the ways no one talks about. I stood there, gripping the edge of the sink, not knowing what to say. Not knowing what was happening in my own body, why it felt like the ground had shifted beneath me, why my first instinct wasn't to scream or walk away, why it was to wonder what that night would feel like. I told him he was crazy. I tried to laugh again. But the moment was already branded. He didn't push. He just stood, gathered his tools, and said, "Think about it." And then he left, just like that. Calm, unapologetic. And I stood alone in the kitchen, with the pipe fixed. But everything else suddenly, broken. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not just what he said, but what it meant that I didn't immediately say no. It haunted me, not in a loud, obvious way, but in the quietest moments while folding laundry, pouring coffee, brushing my hair before bed. That question echoed like a soft knock on a door I hadn't realized was even there. Mark hadn't touched me in months. Not a kiss that lingered. Not a hand across my back. Not even a glance that felt like I mattered. He forgot our anniversary. Again. He came home with flowers the next day like it was some kind of fix-it button, but they were the wrong kind. I hate lilies. He knows that. Or maybe he used to. I stared at those flowers until they wilted in the vase. And I kept hearing Damien's voice. "I see you. I want to take you out, just once." I told myself it was just a question. A foolish, impulsive question that meant nothing. But if it meant nothing, why was my heart racing every time I thought about it? Why did my body feel warm remembering the way he looked at me? Not just at me. Into me. I hated myself for thinking about it. Hated that part of me craved that look. Craved being seen, being wanted, being chosen. When was the last time someone saw me like that? Saw the woman underneath the chores, the scheduling, the laundry, the quiet dinner tables? When did I become invisible in my own home? I kept trying to push it away. Tell myself it was harmless. That it was just one moment. One comment. But some doors, they don't close once they're cracked open. And this one? It was wide enough for the light to spill in. And I wasn't sure I wanted to shut it again. The next time Damien came over, everything felt different. He still smiled. Still joked. Still acted like the same man who used to show up with six-packs and stories. But something had shifted. The space between us was tighter. Charged. We didn't talk about it. Not directly. But every silence between us was heavier. Every glance lingered longer than it should have. I started noticing how close he stood. How his compliments felt just a little too personal. How my laughed around him sounded like someone I hadn't heard in years. And I noticed myself, too. I started changing. Not drastically. Just small things at first. I'd pick out a nicer blouse when I knew he was stopping by. I'd wear lipstick again, something I hadn't bothered with in months. I told myself it was for me. But it wasn't. Mark didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. He still came home late. Still buried himself in emails and spreadsheets. Still kissed my forehead, like I was a roommate instead of his wife. Damien started staying later. At first it was just one more drink or let me finish this movie with the kids. Then it turned into I'll help you clean up, or you look like you could use someone to talk to. And I did. God, I did. One night, Mark left for a conference. For days in Dallas. He barely looked up when he told me. Just packed a bag, kissed the kids, and walked out the door. That same evening, Damien texted, "Don't cook. I'm bringing dinner. You deserve a night off." Part of me wanted to say no. To shut it down. But the truth is, I was already waiting. He showed up with takeout from my favorite Thai place. A bottle of wine. And that smile. We sat in the dining room, just the two of us. Candles flickered on the table. Soft jazz hummed from the speaker in the corner. I told myself it was dinner. Just dinner. But even I didn't believe that. We talked about everything and nothing. Our favorite movies, childhood memories, what we'd do differently if we could go back 10 years. He told me I hadn't lost myself. That I was still in there. That maybe I just needed someone to remind me. At one point, he reached across the table and touched my hand. Not a grab. Not a pull. Just a touch. And I didn't move. I didn't pull away. I looked at his hand on mine. And all I could think about was how long it had been since someone reached for me without needing something. We cleared the table. He offered to help with the dishes. I told him it was fine. But he stayed, and the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was waiting. We didn't plan it. But maybe we didn't stop it either. I wish I could say there was a moment where I came to my senses. Where I stood up, said no, and walked away. But life doesn't always give you those clear lines. Sometimes the line fades. And you only realize you crossed it when you look back. We had finished dinner. The dishes were done. The candles had melted halfway down. And the wine was just enough to soften the edges of everything I'd been trying to hold in. He was standing in the doorway, saying goodnight. I followed him out, just to the front porch. I don't even know why. Maybe to make sure it all stayed innocent. Maybe because I didn't want it to end yet. The air was cool. There was this soft breeze that carried the scent of rain that hadn't come yet. And then he turned to me. He didn't say a word. Just looked at me, really looked at me. Not like I was someone's wife. Not like I was off limits. But like I was a woman, standing in front of him. Wanting to be touched. And he leaned in. Slow. Like he was giving me time to pull away. Giving me one last out. But I didn't take it. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just let him. He kissed me, and I kissed him back. It wasn't wild or rushed. It was slow, intentional, painfully gentle. Like we both knew what we were doing was wrong, but also that it had already begun long before this moment. I remember the silence after. How loud it felt. How heavy. It wasn't regret. It was something worse. Realization. I had done it. I'd crossed a line. Not just with Damien, but with myself. With the version of me that still believed I'd never go there. With the woman who held on to boundaries like lifelines. With the wife who used to feel righteous in her loneliness. I'd betrayed her. And I knew. I couldn't go back. He stepped back. Ran a hand through his hair like he was trying to process it too. Neither of us said anything. He didn't apologize. I didn't ask him to. He walked to his car. I stood in the doorway, and I watched him drive away, with my heartbeat still tangled in the space between us. If this story pulls at something inside you, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because what happens next will leave you speechless. Damien left before sunrise. No goodbyes. No words. Just the soft click of the door. And silence. A silence that didn't feel empty. It felt like a weight pressing against every corner of the house. It stayed with me through the morning light, the sound of the coffee brewing, the kids waking up. But nothing felt normal anymore. I went through the motions. Packed lunches. Folded clothes. Answered emails. All while pretending I wasn't breaking apart from the inside out. And then Mark came home. He hugged the kids, dropped his suitcase by the door, kissed me on the cheek, and told me about the conference. He talked, and I nodded in all the right places. But something in his eyes shifted when he looked at me. Just for a second. It was like he saw it, that something in me had shifted too. Maybe he couldn't name it. But I felt it. That evening, he sat next to me on the couch. His arm brushed mine. I flinched. Just slightly. He noticed. I saw it in the way his mouth paused mid-sentence. He didn't say anything, but I knew he felt it too. That invisible wall between us had grown taller. Later, he asked if I was okay. Softly, almost gently. I lied. I said I was fine. I smiled. And I hated how easily it came out of my mouth. I had never been good at lying. But that night, it slipped out like second nature. Like I'd been practicing my whole life for this one performance. And the guilt. The guilt didn't scream. It whispered. It followed me into the bathroom while I washed my face. It curled up beside me in bed. It echoed in the silence every time Damien's name wasn't mentioned. Because after that night, he stopped coming around. No more weekend visits. No more surprise coffees. No more casual texts. He disappeared from our lives like he'd never been there. But I felt him everywhere. In the way I looked at the front door. In the way I lingered in the kitchen, waiting for something that wasn't coming. And the worst part? Mark didn't even notice. Or maybe he did, and didn't want to face it. Either way, we drifted. Slowly, quietly, like a boat slipping its anchor. We still slept in the same bed. Still made small talk over dinner. Still smiled in front of the kids. But the space between us kept stretching. Until I didn't know how to reach him anymore. And I wasn't even sure I wanted to. But every time I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a woman in love. I didn't see a mother or a wife or a friend. I saw a stranger. Someone who had crossed a line she promised herself she never would. Someone who couldn't even claim the comfort of ignorance anymore. Because the betrayal wasn't just to Mark. It was to the version of me I used to be. The one who believed she'd always know right from wrong. The one who thought she could never be that woman. But now I was. And nothing, not even silence, could drown that truth out. I kept wondering, did I do it because I was lonely? Or because I wanted to feel alive again? I would sit in the dark some nights, after everyone had gone to bed, wrapped in a blanket of silence, trying to untangle my own heart. Was it Damien? Was it what he said? Or was it just The way he made me feel like I wasn't fading. And even then, I wasn't sure if it was him I wanted, or the version of me that existed in his eyes. There were moments, tiny, fleeting moments, when I thought about telling Mark. Just saying it. Letting the truth hit the air like a confession that might set me free. But then I'd picture his face. The way he looked at our kids. The way he trusted me, even when he didn't understand me anymore. And the words would die in my throat. Every single time. I tried to justify it. Tried to tell myself it was a moment. A mistake. But it wasn't just a moment. It was a choice. One that had been building long before lips ever touched. And Damien. He vanished like a ghost with unfinished business. No texts. No calls. No closure. Sometimes I wondered if he even cared. If I was just a game to him. A way to feel powerful. To win something that was never his to claim. Did he see me? Or did he just see a window that had been left open too long? I wanted to hate him for it. But I couldn't. Because deep down I knew. I let him in. I unlocked the door. And now, I was more invisible than ever. Not just to Mark, but to myself. I walked through the house every day like a shadow of a woman I used to be. Smiling when I was supposed to, laughing when it was expected. Cooking, cleaning, folding, pretending. But inside, I was hollow. And maybe the worst part wasn't the kiss. It was that it didn't fix anything. It didn't bring me closer to Mark. It didn't make me feel whole. It didn't heal the ache I thought it would. It just added a new kind of ache. One that was quieter, but deeper. It made me realize something no one ever warns you about, that even in betrayal, you can still feel alone. Have you ever made a choice? Not because you wanted to, but because you didn't know how to say no to yourself? Because you were tired of being invisible? Tired of being the strong one? Tired of pretending that silence didn't hurt more than shouting ever could? I ask myself that all the time. Was I wrong for letting that moment happen? For not pulling away when I had the chance? Or was I just human, aching to feel seen again? To feel something real, even if it came at the wrong time, from the wrong person, in the worst possible way? Because that's the thing no one talks about. It's not always desire that breaks a promise. Sometimes, it's loneliness. Sometimes, it's the quiet kind of desperation that settles in after years of feeling untouched. Tell me in the comments. Was this betrayal? Or was it just a cry for connection in the wrong place at the wrong time? Would you have walked away? Or would you have stayed, just to feel alive again? If stories like this stir your soul, like this video and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart. Desire doesn't knock on your door wearing warning signs. It doesn't come with flashing red lights or sirens. Sometimes, it comes dressed as a friend. With laughter, shared memories, and eyes that see through the cracks you thought you'd buried. The scariest betrayals? They're not the ones that scream. They're the whispers. The quiet, unexpected moments that slip past your guard when you're most unseen, most forgotten. I thought I was reclaiming a part of myself. I thought if I could feel wanted, I'd feel whole again. But in the end, I lost a piece I can't get back. Not just trust, not just faith, but a version of me that still believed I was stronger than that moment. I walk through life differently now. Quieter, more careful. And if you're ever standing at a crossroad, torn between what you crave and what you know, ask yourself, not just what you want in that moment, but what you'll still respect in the mirror when the night is over. Because sometimes, the damage isn't in what you lose. It's in who you become just to feel something again.